I want to get this question over with. All you're doing is ensure it goes on forever. Quick question. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, I've only got 30 seconds. The Prime Minister.
The unthinkable has just happened inside the House of Commons. Prime Minister's questions, usually loud, theatrical, but tightly choreographed, suddenly spiralled into something far more dangerous. The chamber didn't just argue, it erupted, and at the centre of the chaos stood Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, facing off against Prime Minister Keir Starmer in a clash that left Westminster stunned. What began as a routine PMQs exchange turned into one of the most explosive moments Parliament has witnessed in years. The atmosphere was already tense before Farage even stood up. Murmurs rippled across the green benches. MPs leaned forward. The Speaker braced himself. Everyone sensed something was coming, but no one expected this. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. If you care about what's really happening in British politics behind the headlines, beyond the spin, then please take just 1 second to like this video and subscribe to the Britain Daily. It's completely free and it helps us keep bringing you the hard-hitting stories that matter. Farage rose, visibly fired up, clutching his notes. He barely had 30 seconds. No long speech, no rambling preamble, just a direct hit. He reminded the House that the Prime Minister had repeatedly promised to close migrant hotels by the end of the Parliament. Then came the bombshell.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, I've only got 30 seconds. The Prime Minister has stated very clearly that he wants to close the migrant hotels by the end of this Parliament. Well, the reform-led West Northamptonshire Council, brilliantly led council, will be issuing foreclosure notices on 3 migrant hotels within the next few days in response to grave public concern about the safety of women and girls on the streets of West Northamptonshire. Would the Prime Minister approve of us speeding up the closure of the migrant hotels?
Yeah.
Farage revealed that reform-led West Northamptonshire Council was preparing to issue foreclosure notices on 3 migrant hotels. Not next year, not in due course, but within days. His justification was blunt and incendiary, grave public concern about the safety of women and girls on local streets. Gasps echoed across the chamber. This wasn't just rhetoric, this was action. Real councils, real notices, real consequences. Farage leaned in and delivered the killer question straight to the Prime Minister. Would the Prime Minister approve of us speeding up the closure of the migrant hotels? For a split second, the Commons fell silent. Then Keir Starmer stood. His response wasn't calm. It wasn't measured. It was defensive, and it would change everything. Starmer insisted the government would grip the mess it had inherited and close every hotel. But instead of addressing the proposal head-on, he pivoted sharply. His tone hardened. His language sharpened. He accused Farage of failing to condemn comments about children in care. Then came the line that detonated the chamber. Starmer accused Reform of racism for implying that Farage's party harboured views beyond the pale.
Mr. Speaker, we will grip the mess we inherited and close every hotel. But he says he doesn't have time to condemn the comments calling children in care evil. He's also not had the time, it appears, to condemn the racist comments of his own MP. Utterly spineless.
The reaction was instant. Shouting erupted from all sides. Reform MPS exploded in fury. Labour MPS roared in support. The Speaker leapt to his feet, desperately trying to restore order as the Commons descended into bedlam. This was no longer policy debate. It was personal, raw, unfiltered. Farage shouted back across the floor, visibly livid. He accused the Prime Minister of being spineless, of hiding behind smears instead of confronting the reality playing out in towns across Britain. The Speaker's voice rang out again and again, pleading for calm. MPS ignored him. The House was out of control. In that moment, something fundamental cracked. This wasn't just about migrant hotels. It wasn't just about councils. It wasn't even just about Reform versus Labour. This was about authority. and who still had it. And as the noise finally subsided, one thing was clear. Keir Starmer had picked a fight he may not be able to win, and this clash was only just beginning. When the Speaker finally dragged the Commons back from the brink, the damage was already done. PMQs ended, but the real crisis was only beginning. As MPs spilled out into the corridors of Westminster, the atmosphere turned poisonous. Shouting matches broke out near the committee rooms. Advisers rushed to phones. Whips moved fast, trying to contain what many inside Labour were already calling a catastrophic misstep. Keir Starmer's decision to label Reform UK as racist on the floor of the House sent shockwaves through Parliament. And not just on the opposition benches. Within minutes, Reform MPs were giving furious interviews to broadcasters. Nigel Farage, surrounded by cameras, didn't hold back. "This Prime Minister has nothing," he snapped. "No answers, no solutions, just insults. When challenged, he smears. That's not leadership, that's weakness." But the most dangerous fallout wasn't happening on camera. It was happening inside Labour itself. Multiple Labour MPs, speaking anonymously, admitted they were stunned by Starmer's approach. One backbencher described the moment as reckless, another as a gift to Reform UK. Several privately acknowledged that Starmer had walked straight into Farage's trap. Instead of debating migrant hotels, an issue Labour is already deeply divided on, Starmer had turned the exchange into a culture war confrontation, and Reform, they feared, thrives on exactly that terrain. Worse still, the policy bombshell Farage dropped couldn't be ignored. Local councils issuing foreclosure notices on migrant hotels was not theoretical, it was actionable. Legal teams inside the Home Office were reportedly scrambling to assess whether Reform-led councils could actually carry it out, and what would happen if they did. That panic reached Downing Street fast. By early afternoon, emergency meetings were convened. Senior advisers warned that if councils began forcing closures, the government could lose control of asylum accommodation overnight. Hotels would shut, migrants would be displaced, headlines would explode, and all of it would happen on Starmer's watch. Meanwhile, the Speaker was furious. Sir Lindsay Hoyle was said to be deeply frustrated by how the exchange spiralled out of control. Sources claim he privately warned senior MPs that language in the Commons was sliding into the gutter and that PMQs was becoming impossible to manage. For Starmer, this mattered. Being publicly rebuked or even privately criticised by the Speaker only added to the perception that he was losing grip of the House. Outside Westminster, the reaction was even more brutal. Clips of the clash spread like wildfire across social media. Millions watched the moment Starmer accused Reform of racism, and Farage's furious response. Comment sections erupted, hashtags trended within hours. Supporters of Reform hailed Farage as the only one telling the truth. Critics accused Starmer of silencing debate with labels instead of answers. Even voters with no love for Farage admitted the Prime Minister looked rattled. Polling experts quietly began warning Labour HQ that the exchange could harden opinion in key red wall and swing constituencies, precisely where immigration and migrant accommodation remain explosive issues. And then came the most worrying development of all. Several councils, not just Reform-led ones, reportedly began asking legal questions about whether they too could block or challenge migrant hotel contracts. The idea was spreading. What started as one fiery PMQs question was turning into a national test of authority. By nightfall, one senior Labour source summed up the mood bluntly. He didn't shut Farage down, he lit him up. And with pressure building from councils, the Speaker, the public, and even his own MPs, Keir Starmer was about to face the consequences. By the following morning, it was clear this was no longer just a bad PMQs moment. It was a turning point. Keir Starmer woke up to a political landscape that looked markedly different from the day before. Newspapers led with headlines about chaos, control lost, and a Prime Minister on the defensive. Broadcast panels replayed the clash on loop, analysing every pause, every interruption, every moment the Speaker struggled to contain the chamber. And at the centre of it all stood Nigel Farage, calm, defiant, and suddenly dominant. Farage's migrant hotel foreclosure proposal had done something few opposition moments managed to achieve. It shifted the entire national conversation. Instead of discussing Labour's long-term immigration strategy, the country was now asking a far more dangerous question for the government. Who is actually in control? Westminster or local councils? Reform UK moved fast. Within hours, party officials confirmed that legal notices were being prepared in multiple council areas. Whether or not they would succeed in court almost didn't matter. The optics were devastating. Reform looked decisive. Labour looked reactive. Inside Number 10, the panic intensified. Senior aides reportedly urged Starmer to de-escalate, to avoid further personal attacks and to bring the debate back to policy. But the damage was already done. By calling Reform racist in the Commons, Starmer had hardened battle lines and given Farage exactly the confrontation he thrives on. More worrying still was the polling fallout. Internal tracking suggested Reform support spiking among voters who felt ignored, dismissed or talked down to. In focus groups, a familiar phrase kept appearing. He doesn't listen, he lectures. That perception, once embedded, is almost impossible to shake. Even within Labour's parliamentary party, doubts grew louder. Some MPs questioned whether Starmer had misjudged the mood of the country. Others worried that PMQs had exposed a deeper problem, and not just tone, but authority. A Prime Minister confident in control doesn't need to reach for labels. He dominates the argument. And on this day, many felt Starmer hadn't. Meanwhile, the Speaker's role loomed large. Sir Lindsay Hoyle's visible struggle to rein in the Commons became symbolic of the wider breakdown. The chamber wasn't just noisy, but it was ungovernable. And when a speaker appears close to losing control, it reflects badly on the government of the day. Commentators began asking uncomfortable questions. If Starmer can't command PMQs, how does he command the country? If he lashes out under pressure, how does he handle crisis? Farage wasted no time pressing the advantage. In interviews, he framed the exchange not as an insult, but as proof. Proof, he said, that Labour had no answers on migration, no grip on public safety, and no respect for voters' concerns. When they're exposed, Farage claimed, they smear. That message landed. By the end of the week, what began as a 30-second PMQs question had evolved into something far bigger, a test of leadership, legitimacy, and nerve. For Starmer, the danger is clear. Every time he responds to Reform with outrage instead of authority, he elevates them. Every clash makes Farage look less like a fringe voice and more like a challenger. And for Westminster as a whole, the moment revealed something deeper, a house on edge, a speaker under strain, and a political system cracking under pressure. This wasn't just another noisy PMQs, it was a warning shot. And whether Keir Starmer heeds it or keeps charging headlong into confrontation may define not just his leadership, but the future balance of British politics itself.